Hello, everybody, and welcome to another patch preview. My name is Oliver Steinarsson, and I'm going to be leading you through this. But the expertise is coming from Jking7, multiple season winner, now OCC champion. How are you doing today, my friend?
Pretty good. I'm excited to see what you guys have in store for this November patch.
Yeah, this is an interesting patch. This is the kind of last big patch that we're doing before the World Championship. Anything that's going to come kind of after this will be more tweaks around the meta, but not no drastic changes. So some pretty interesting things in store. But let's kick it off with the Germans right now, and the first card is the 88 millimeter flak. And what has changed now is it deals double damage against
Wow.
air and tank units.
This is a very big change. Um, I'm not sure how much of an impact this is going to have in constructed because a 6 mana artillery that doesn't do anything to turn its blade, I don't think is ever going to be competitive. But this is very big change for draft. This card is going to be incredibly important.
Yeah, that's a great point. Its value definitely went up massively in draft with this change.
I think the biggest part is when you play it in the support line, often the only way for the enemy to kill it was used to be rushing a tank up, but now you really need like either multiple tanks, multiple planes, or infantry already in the front line.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's not dwell too long on this one because the next one is a pretty big change as well, and that is the card Air Blitz.
Oh,
So now it costs 3 credits, and the damage has been dropped down to 3. So removing a little bit of that burn power, but still maintaining, some firepower in form of kind of resource, less resource cost.
I think this one's going to make a lot of people happy. I know a lot of people have been seeing the burn, especially the burn Japan decks using air blitzes as a problem, and I really like the fact that the cost was also reduced because I think 4 mana DL3 would be near unplayable. So, and now this fits better if you run Enigmas because you can get these out of your hand a lot faster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these are two really interesting changes to Germany, and I think we're kind of seeing a point where Germany's in a pretty good spot right now. I feel like it's still efficient. It can still do some damage on ladder and in tournaments, but it isn't as overwhelming. And this kind of reduces a little bit of the power it can bring as an ally into these burn combos and that kind of stuff. So let's move on to the US of A. The first card being changed in the USA is the M5 Stuart. So now it has +4 attack against infantry.
It used to be +3, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So you're now
This
basically getting a what 6/4 against infantry for 3.
this is really good because it's comparable to the Volksgrenadier, so it will now actually kill that and survive. And it will also kill Takasagi's. So I think this is a pretty big change because there's not a lot of 5 health infantry, but there's a lot of 6 health infantry. The Lincolnshire as well.
Yeah, yeah, and East Surrey's
Hmm.
as well. The Fifth Brigades, pretty much all of the guard units for Britain are gonna crumble under the might of the M5 Stuart. Um, All right, next card. This card has been, in my opinion, one of the most kind of oppressive cards to play against when played on curve in the game. And I think a lot of people are going to be excited about this change. It is the P40N5. So the P40N5 now a 4/3.
This is a very good change. I very much like this. Um, yeah, just the slightly lowered health. It keeps the card the same, at least in terms of like the effect it has. I think it's a very interesting effect, but as a 4/4, there's not a lot you could kill it if it comes out on turn 4 or even turn 3 with ramp.
Yeah, I felt like that was always the problem. You never really had a unit on board that was able to deal with it. So you always had to play a unit into having like 3 operation cost, and then you needed to wait, skip a turn to be able to move it into the front line and attack with it. It was always like really weird dynamic that kind of formed when it came out on curve. But I think this definitely smooths that out a little bit. All right, next card that's coming up. It is an Italian card. Um, So we did tweak an Italian card last patch as well. This time it is the Pact of Steel. So now it reads both players draw a card, discard the lower cost card, repeat 3 more times. So you're basically
Oh,
gambling and pretty good against low cost, aggro decks.
this is a very interesting card. This drastically changed the effect. Um, it's very hard to say how this card will be used, but I'm sure people will find a way to use this, especially in a deck you do not expect to see it. I think this increases Italy's versatility as an ally, which is really good.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think this definitely has a home in kind of some counter type decks, right? It now is maybe pretty good to bring, Italy as an ally if you're planning on bringing some big, um, bringing some big units along with you. Um, but yeah, so if we move on, for some reason we're getting some audio disturbances here. I don't know if the stream is hearing them, but the next card, it comes from the UK and it is Radar Alert. So that's been changed now. It has dropped in cost down to 2.
I think this card might actually be viable now in British air decks because a cost of 2, a decrease in from 3 to 2 is actually very big, especially if you're going to be playing this multiple turns in a row. Uh, so I think this is a very good change.
Okay.
Especially, I really like changing these specials, which were very underutilized, into something more viable.
All right. Well, now we get into the truly meaningful changes for Britain. And this is a really popular card for Britain. It is an elite, and it is the 85th Pioneer Company. So your orders cost 1 less credit to a minimum of 1.
This is a change which I've seen a lot of people asking for, like this exact change, and I think this is a very good change. You're going to see probably a lot less commando decks, but I'm sure you're quite broken up about this change. But
No, I'm not actually. I always think I always thought of the Commandos as having multiple avenues to victory, and I never thought the Pioneers was and the zero cost orders were necessarily a distinct part of that. It was just a really good, nice to have that bailed you out of some extreme situations sometimes. So I'm quite happy to see this change, and I'm interested to see how it's gonna play out. But let's see. Are
yeah,
you
this
ready
is a
for the
very
other
cool
change?
change. I am very ready.
Are you really? I don't know if you're ready, J King, because the next change is to the M3A3 Honey.
Oh,
So if you can see that now,
oh,
smokescreen has been removed and it now has 3 HP.
oh! I was not ready for this. This is a very big change. This is really going to shake up the meta a lot because I was looking at what decks I was going to bring, thinking towards the World Championship, and it was Japan aggro and commandos were up there, and now both have been changed. So this is a this is going to let more decks deal with this, and it's going to make a wider range of aggro decks viable.
I also think so personally, I think this sharpens the identity of the honey a little bit. It means that the honey is no longer just something that is super nice to grab along into pretty much any deck. You get to play it into your support line. You get to draw out a removal card if the opponent has it, but if not, it just ticks away as HP generator for the rest of the game. With this, I feel like if you want to go for a health gain Commonwealth type strategy, now you have to go, honey is one of the core cards in my win condition, and now I need to build around protecting it. I need to make sure that it's going to be hard to remove. I need to be able to protect it. I need to be able to make it, make it possible for the card to go off instead of just playing it and just waiting, right?
Yeah, I also really like this change because it means you're now going to actually be attacking with your honey into the front line instead of just playing out your units and just waiting.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think I'm actually that's also kind of a stealth nerf, I guess, from some of the Rule Britannia decks where having those smoke screened honeys that were maybe 212 all of a sudden in the backline Rule Britannia, and then move them up and attack and do 24 damage. That was kind of the big alternative win condition, but it kind of felt like you had too many bailout strategies in a lot of those decks. So I'm excited for this change and definitely gonna be excited to see what it means for the latter. But let's look at the next card. The next card is from Japan. It is the Type 98 Ki Ni, I guess. So now it is a 2 cost, 0 operation cost, plus it gets 1 attack if you have attacked with another unit this turn. So
Wow, this this changes a lot. This might be really good, and the zero operation cost might mean that the Yokosuka might be able to make a comeback. I really like this change.
yeah, you've been playing a lot of Japanese aggro, right? So
Yeah,
very kind of tuned into where the status of that nation is right now. So I'm really excited that you're excited about that change. But this next change is probably going to get you even more excited. So this card is the Jade Division, and now it has, I would say, a true purpose. So now it costs 5 credits. It's a 6/6 stat line, but it gets +1/+1 when you deploy a Japanese unit. And if you get it over 10 attack, it has Fury.
I'm trying this card out as soon as the patch becomes live. I don't know if it's going to be competitive, top tier, viable, but this is hilarious. It also works if
Lightning
you run,
Conquest.
yep, Lightning Conquest or for Prosperity if you want to build like a more unit buff deck instead of just blitz out things. This I really like this change because 6 mana 9/9 just got removed, and in the same way, this might just get removed as well. But it's you can come out. It comes out cheaper and has much more potential.
I gotta say, from me personally, it's also just it's more fun, right?
Yeah,
Like I feel like this is just a more fun version of Jade Division, right? It's still a card that you can remove if you're able to remove it. It's still a card that's an infantry that takes time to get across the field, but now there's more versatility to it, and you can play more around it, and you can have more fun with it. And I think that's exactly what elite cards should do in a game like Cards.
yeah. I'm a very big fan of elite cards, which have very like unique effects and also even somewhat like game ending effects if you can reach a condition. Like Commonwealth is my favorite designed elite in the game, where it's if you meet this condition, deal 20 damage. And this is very much the same way as if it has 10 attack, gain Fury, which will then deal 20 damage.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been a bombshell after bombshell so far, but are you ready for this next one? Because now we're gonna go over to the French.
I have me and so many people have been waiting for this to see how you guys are going to change these.
So 2 cards are being tweaked for the French in this pass. There are further plans for the French down the line, but some technical restrictions means that we can't get to that right now. But in the interim, Viva la Resistance have been dropped down to a 1 credit card, and now it only gives 1 resistance card to the enemy hand, but it replaces itself.
I love this change. The adding two was such a big problem because it meant that if you were going second and they played Vive la Resistance, you were already at 9 cards, and it meant the constant threat of the resistance was 6 cards, putting you to 6 resistance cards rather than now it's going to be 4. This is a and lowering the cost is also good because it's going to mean that people who like playing resistance, they're not getting like incredibly punished for running this.
Yeah, and I think with these, both this change and the next one that we're gonna kind of review, I think it still allows for it to play within that identity that was kind of formed around resistance, but it isn't as easily overpowering. Now it matters kind of in what order you get your cards or play your resistance cards. You can't just immediately play any resistance cards you draw from your deck, and that means that you're going to be able to, stuff up the enemy's hand. So
Yeah. Actually, I really like this because now you can almost use it as like a combo piece where you save like 1, 2, maybe even 3 of these, and then you play them out very cheap in one turn, and then you play a sabotage, or then you play the infantry that gains stats equal to the hand size.
yeah, yeah, and you know, resistance is going to work better with commandos now. But yeah, talking about filling up the enemy's hand, the other French card that is being tweaked is called Liberation. So Liberation now costs 6 credits and adds 3 resistance cards to the enemy hand, and your HQ gets defense equal to cards in the enemy hand. So less of a punishment if your opponent decided to spend turn 5 getting rid of all the resistance cards in their hands, only to get, stuffed up on the next turn.
Yeah, I also really like this change because not only does it just limit the total number of resistance cards that they can add, but I think you could actually start running a British French resistance deck where the goal is reaching Commonwealth rather than just destroying your opponent's deck with resistance cards.
Yeah, ooh, that's actually pretty interesting. Hmm. And I think, to be honest, I think sabotage might be one of the best, damage orders in the game.
Yeah,
So I think with this, like you talk about, the lower cost of the Viva Liver systems, um, with commandos, I think you all of a sudden, yeah, you do have a pretty interesting deck that gives you a lot of removal and a lot of control with those two nations. I hadn't really thought about that, but now really excited. Actually getting more and more excited about this patch. Actually, that happens every time when I sit down with one of you guys and talk about the patch. I get more and more excited about what it's going to mean. So, but now we're going to jump over to the Soviets. Those are your homeboys. Are you ready for that?
I'm very excited. I expect only buffs.
All right. The first one that is being changed is the ISU 152. So it now deals double damage against the enemy HQ and tanks.
I really like this change. I I've tried to make this card work for so many times, and in my head, I always think it does double damage to infantry as well, like the OT. So now that it does more than just face, I think this card is much better because it can now actually fight for the front line.
It's also a little bit better to get in Urals, right? So like
Hmm.
that's where I normally see this card kind of come out is when people Euro Factory something that's a 6 credit, but now it's a little bit more of a smile on your face when you roll the ISU out of that.
Yeah,
All right, we're gonna move on to the final card that is going to be changed in this upcoming patch, and it's a very popular one. It's something that is kind of iconic to the Soviets. It's also an elite, and it's the Sixth Airborne. So the Sixth Airborne is being changed. It now costs 6 credits. Its stats are 6 attack, 8 defense. And it still adds a T-34 to the support line.
so it's +1 credit, +1/+1 in stats.
Yeah.
Hmm. I don't think this changes that much. I guess now the biggest thing is it costs 12 to play it, move up, or I guess that would be 10 to play it, move up the tank, then attack with the tank, rather than 9. So it makes committing to going into the front line and then playing a Ural or a Red Banner slightly more of like a one turn committal. But as a whole, I like this change.
Yeah. Well, that's it for the cards that are going to be touched in this upcoming patch. It is quite a big patch, and it's touching on a lot of pretty popular cards. So, overall, what is your what are your thoughts going into this? Going into November, going into the World Championship, and uh, yeah, the kind of competitive season, so to speak.
I think at the moment, I think Soviet control is the best deck in the game. I think Soviets are probably arguably the best nation in the game, but I think there's a lot of room for new decks to be discovered between now and December. And I think, especially with the fall of some of these very oppressive decks like Commando and Jagro, you're going to see a lot more creativity and decks filling this void.
Yeah, and we made it so that you're able to you're able to submit you will submit another set of decks before the top 16 after the Swiss rounds in the World Championship. So all the development in the meta that's going to happen during the group stages gets to be reflected into the top 16 and into the finals. So really, really excited to see what we're going to see at the end of the end of the group stages for World Championship and what the landscape in cards is going to look like at that time.
Yeah, I'm also really excited because I don't think any of these changes were just like ban hammer, like destroy a card. I think anyone who has any of these cards in their collections, whether it was changed slightly better or slightly worse, I think they're still going to come out with something playable and something that is like unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if we think about like the Pioneer change, for instance, right? I mean, sure, you're not going to be able to cycle through your entire deck within a single turn, but you're still going to be able to, set up a huge turn where you're going to play a ton of much lower cost orders in your hand. You're still going to be able to get them from, His Majesty's Chosen and have two of them, and that's going to drop, you're going to have a 3 credit night raid. That's what I love. So all of that stuff is still going to be there, but it's just taking away a little bit of that, those edge cases where it's just a little bit too good.
And I think it really encourages creativity in what orders people are going to run now, because now a 2 cost order is the exact same as a 1 cost order in terms of being able to play it with Pioneer. So I think we're
Yeah.
going to see a lot of orders we haven't seen before entering Commando decks.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I for one, I run air power in my like primary commando deck, and that surprises a lot of people, but I find that that's a hugely powerful card to run there, and I think that's true for a lot of different orders. We can do it, for instance, massively powerful. You don't even need to run a cup of teas if you don't want to, right? So like we might even start seeing different compositions where it's no longer combo commandos with 1 cost spells, but it's just in general keep them alive and play spells or orders, right?
Yeah, I'm very excited to see Commandos as like a 20 deck or like a 20 card package that people fill in the other half rather than like a 35 card package.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can see that you, J King, are itching to start theory crafting. I can just see it in your face. You're gonna immediately leave this call and start drafting things in your notebook. But thank you so much for joining me for this one. It was great having you and great getting your insights on this. And I do hope you enjoy the patch. Any last words?
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for doing these changes. I think that a lot of these changes were necessary, and what I especially like about your dev team is the changes to cards which are underutilized. Because I think that's something that a lot of other games don't do. Is if something is underutilized, it just gets ignored, and they just focus on what is overpowered. So I'm very excited to play these cards which used to be very weak and are now either different or stronger.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you to everyone that tuned in and watched this. We hope you enjoy the patch. It's going to be coming at the beginning of November. We'll see you in the next patch preview.